Welcome to the Courting Happiness podcast. This is a space where self-care becomes part of your day. A space where you learn evidence-based strategies to help your life, share it with those you love, and cultivate well-being at work. I'm your host, Dr. Kortni Alston. I'm a former news director, television reporter turned happiness scholar, TEDx speaker, and transformational trainer. I also understand hardships. While working my dream job in television, I lived a nightmare suddenly becoming a young widow after 86 days of marriage. I became committed to learning more about resilience, healing, and happiness. This is how I discovered my area of research, which is positive psychology. Now I'm living my calling of training individuals and organizations on happiness. And my new chapter begins with being happily engaged. The Courting and Courting Happiness is about a true courtship. I like to say commitment with happiness. The K in courting stands for the vulnerability of sharing my story, inspirational interviews with phenomenal people, the infusion of positive psychology, and so much more. You'll learn how to commit to your well-being one episode at a time. I hope you subscribe and share. So, are you ready? Let's get started. So, let's talk about healthy holiday boundaries. I will say this, for me, there is nothing like the sights and the sounds of the holiday season, but it can also be stressful. What can you do to make sure you keep your peace? Give yourself the gift of boundaries. Boundaries are essential for our self-care, and psychology today holds some really good answers in regards to how to maintain your boundaries. They published an article by Sharon Martin titled Healthy Holiday Boundaries. Healthy holidays are built on setting healthy limits. And Martin says, the holidays revolve around giving to others and making others happy. So it can be extra hard to set limits at this time of the year. There's nothing wrong with giving and taking care of others as long as you aren't compromising your health, values, and mental well-being to do it. Setting boundaries doesn't mean you don't care about others. Boundaries demonstrate that you care about others and you care about yourself. So, are you ready to unwrap the gift of boundaries? I hope so. So let's dive in, and here are Sharon Martin's tips on healthy holiday boundaries. Feel empowered to skip, go late, leave early, or even drive your own car to the holiday parties. And so I love what she shares in terms of this, because sometimes we may feel like we need to maybe go with someone, or maybe not feel comfortable saying, well, I'm going to drive my car too, right? But I love that she's sharing the value of driving your own car, number one, going late. Maybe you're thinking, maybe I want to go, but I don't want to be there the entire time for whatever reason that may be. I mean, the holidays can bring about so many different dynamics, especially if you're dealing with all these other dynamics within your own life. Maybe you have suffered a loss, or you've suffered many losses, and the holidays mean something different now without the person that you've been so, loved sharing the holidays with, or so accustomed to sharing the holidays with. I lost my mother back in 2016, and I will say that Christmas just really hasn't been the same. I can barely say it without her, because she was the queen of Christmas. She would transform our home and create these beautiful Christmas villages surrounding the tree. And so I can certainly understand how holidays can look different after a loss or a transition or some type of change. She also mentions leaving early. Like, it's okay. It's okay to leave early. And she also mentions this. If you heard this when I shared her tip, skipping it. It's okay. It's okay. So I love that she says, feel empowered to skip, go late, leave early, or drive your own car to the holiday parties. Here's another one she mentions. Saying yes because you want to, not out of obligation to please others. Saying yes because you want to, not out of obligation to please others. That is really powerful because sometimes, right, during the holidays, as she mentioned earlier, in terms of the fact that the holidays are about coming together and we're thinking about others and so forth. And, I love that she's reminding us to honor our feelings and saying yes because you truly want to, not because you feel like you should be there or you feel that there's obligation to be there. So, saying yes because you want to. Remember that during the holiday season. She also shared this, asking your guests not to discuss politics. I can certainly understand that in terms of the politics dynamic, right? So she says, ask your guests not to talk, not to discuss politics. It can possibly cause some division depending on certain dynamics in terms of individuals, in terms of the in terms of a lot of different factors, right? And so I can see that in terms of asking your guests not to discuss politics, choosing not to send holiday cards. Wow. Or any holiday tradition or any other holiday tradition she shares. So that's interesting, right? So choosing not to send holiday cards. So, one of the things that I love what she's sharing is that it's about honoring where you are. So, maybe this year you aren't able to send a holiday card. And that's okay, right? And she also mentions, or any other holiday tradition. Right now, maybe it's, it could be a little challenging. It's interesting because, as I mentioned, my mother's death in 2016, and the fact that she was, she spoke to all things Christmas for our family, and I saw that even more after her death. Some of the things that we were no longer doing because she's gone, but now I'm finding things that I am starting to do. And things that I've created my own type of tradition. And so what I love what she's sharing is that honoring where you are. And it doesn't have to necessarily mean that this is what it will be for, the next 5 Christmases. And it's okay if it is. It all depends on your feelings, where you are. So choosing not to send holiday cards, it's okay. It's okay. Or any other holiday tradition right now, right? It's okay. It's okay. I will tell you, I've been there. I've pulled back on it, especially after the loss of my mom. It's okay. And I love that she's sharing these tips because sometimes we need to see or hear it from someone else for us to give ourselves permission to say, okay, I'm just not feeling it this year, and that's okay. Honor your feelings. She also says limiting how much alcohol you consume, right? So limiting that and thinking about those dynamics as it relates to, alcohol consumption. So she shares that. She also shares this, sticking to your budget, right? Making sure you're sticking to your budget, not going over, or, making sure you're maintaining your budget. Or maybe if you do go over, forgiving yourself for that, right? Because I think what's so important is forgiveness this type of the year, as well as self-compassion too. Also, clearly communicating your needs and expectations. So that's important as well. Clearly communicating your needs in terms of your expectations. And I think that's so important in terms of honoring your feelings. Especially when you're surrounded by positive relationships where you can truly share without feeling judged around people who have, highly empathetic and understand empathetic understanding. And I think it's great to be able to share and clearly communicate what your needs are and your expectations. And even if you're talking to someone that may not share some of the qualities I mentioned in terms of having high levels of empathy or being an active listener and understanding what that can look like and maybe understanding. But I think it's still important to be able to share and clearly communicate what your needs and expectations are. Because again, it goes back to honoring your feelings. And it goes back to really making sure that you're thinking and caring for yourself, especially this time of the year. It's interesting, before I recorded this podcast episode, I was on Facebook and I was looking at my thread. And then, you know how Facebook shows a post that you shared like a year ago at this time. And it's so ironic because a year ago today, I actually posted in my Facebook stories, right? How your boundary doesn't need an apology. Your boundary does not need an apology. And I think when you're clearly communicating your needs and expectations, it's about making sure you're sharing them in regards to honoring your feelings, whatever that is. And so I think it's so important in terms of the journey, but it's also so important in regards to maintaining those healthy holiday boundaries. And so here's her last one in terms of tips. Not checking your work emails on your day off. A pause on that one. Because sometimes I'm checking every email. I'm checking work. I'm checking, I'm checking everything. I'm checking everything in terms of drkortnialston.com. I'm looking at Facebook and Instagram. And so, look, I'm a work in progress. I'm really honest about it in regards to that. But I love that she shares honoring not checking your work emails on your day off. So if you're a work in progress like me, right, it might be a little challenging not looking at the phone and checking out the emails for that day. And that's okay. Maybe you didn't check it 10 times. Maybe you checked it just half of that, right? So honor yourself in terms of where you are. But I love that she shares not checking your work emails on your day off. I'm certainly going to work on that. I'm actually going to see if I can work on not checking them during maybe Christmas Day in particularly, and working on Christmas Eve. See, I'm a work in progress. Can you hear it? So, after hearing all of those tips, what speaks to you? How can you see yourself managing your holiday stress? And which boundary or boundaries feel like a good fit for you? Martin's article provides insightful best practices that can help. You can read her article by visiting the Courting Happiness Podcast website at drkortnialston.com/podcast/episode 115. She also urges us to set boundaries, kind of setting boundaries, I should say, aren't like a one-time occurrence. Sometimes we need to set the same boundaries with some people repeatedly. Yep. On repeat. And she adds that sometimes we must create self-management tools, or really goals, she shares, to remain true to ourselves. So here's some strategies to keep in mind in regards to creating some self-management goals for you. Her strategies are writing down. So write down your boundaries, which can help you understand how to achieve what's important and why. I think the why is always important, right? And understanding, why is this important to you? How is this going to help you feel maybe safe or comfortable, or just honoring whatever feelings you have in regards to setting this boundary or setting boundaries? So write about them, write down your boundaries. And she says it can help you understand what you're trying to achieve in terms of its importance, but also your why. Number 2, consider what you will do if someone continues to violate your boundaries. Something to think about, right? So, what are you going to do if someone violates your boundaries? What will you say? Maybe what will you do? Right? Will you how will you manage it? And I think that's important to think about how that plays out, right? But it's also about honoring yourself. Honoring yourself. When a dear friend of mine shared with me when I, asked about, an event, and she shared that she could be there but not be at a certain, position during the event. And granted, it hurt a little, right? Because I was like, oh gosh, I really want her to be at this, to be this person at the event, but she will be at the event. And I had to respect that. And when I look back on it more and more, I'm really grateful we had the conversation. And I'm grateful that she shared her boundary. And I am grateful that I'm honoring it. And when we talked about it, I never tried to change her mind. I wasn't like, wait a minute, come on, why don't you kind of reconsider? I would like you to do this at the event. And she said, I can't. And you know what? Because I love her and because she is one of my dearest friends, I respect her boundary. So when you love someone and you're empathetic, you can really value the boundary or boundaries. And now when I look back on it, I'm just really proud of her, right? It can be a little hard talking to one of your besties and saying, yeah, I want to be there, but I don't know about being this, right? It can be really challenging, but it's okay. It's okay. And I love her and I'm so proud of her. So consider what you'll do when someone continues to violate your boundaries. Maybe they're not as understanding as Dr. Kortni, right? Or maybe they just need to understand certain dynamics, right? Depending on your relationship with that person. But I love how she's sharing with us, considering what you'll do if someone continues to violate your boundaries. She also mentions practice. Practice. And I think practice is great. Sometimes it's good to practice and play out certain things. Sometimes it's good to also practice by just talking to other individuals. I love talking to my self-care squad, and we like talking through. We are the queen of boundaries in my self-care squad. And so one of the people that as I talked about that event earlier, right? She's another member of my self-care squad. So we honor each other's boundaries, right? So I think it's great when we're talking about people who are not a part of our self-care squad and we're embarking on some type of either event or some other type of dynamic in our lives, and we talk it through. And talking it through with them always is so helpful. Positive relationships are such a game changer in our lives. So I love that she's talking about practice. And number 4, my self-care squad will tell you yes to number 4. They will shout it. They will clap about it. and they will just say yes, yes, indeed. Number 4, this is what Martin shares. She says, know this, your boundaries are non-negotiable. Whew. Your boundaries are non-negotiable. Remember that as you're honoring your feelings and honoring yourself. So saying no to people and things you dread can allow you to say yes to yourself, your peace, and your space for activities that bring you joy, and giving you more space to do things that you are comfortable or feel safe or honored or whatever the dynamic is in regards to why you're setting these healthy boundaries. You can learn more by visiting drkortnialston.com/podcast/episode 115. Remember, give yourself the greatest present this year. Focus on your well-being. And as I always say, it's your most important job. And always remember this: I'm always here to help. Thank you so much for listening. Let's continue this conversation online. Email us at podcast@drkortnialston.com. That's podcast@drkortnialston.com. Join us on Instagram at Courting Happiness. Don't forget, that's courting with a K. Also, I hope you join our private Facebook community. You can find us at Courting Happiness Podcast Community. Our private Facebook group is a safe haven to share, meet more people looking to build positive relationships, focus on well-being, and create a happier life. Now, are you ready to spread happiness? We hope you subscribe and share this podcast with your family, friends, coworkers, and all the important people in your world. We release a new episode every Thursday. Congratulations on your continued commitment to your courting happiness journey. Thank you so much for listening. We want you to be well, be happier, and be kinder to yourself. We can't wait to see you next week.